Hello and welcome to the very first episode of our Camp Cretaceous recap series. I'm Zach, and in today's episode, we're going to be recapping Season 1, Episode 1 of Camp Cretaceous. So before we begin in the recap, I want to go over kind of the timeline to kick things off. From what I can tell, I might be off on this, but from what I could tell, I went through the series and found when they actually start encountering the events of Jurassic World and worked my way back. And I believe that the first day of camp is essentially 3 days before the events of Jurassic World. So we're kind of using that to build our timeline. The events of this episode take place mainly in the first day and the first night of camp. There is a little bit at the prologue that is, we don't really know when that takes place in the timeline, which is where Darius is playing the VR game and actually wins his spot at camp. So we really don't know where that is in the timeline, but the main events that are going to happen throughout this episode are happening 3 days before the events of Jurassic World. So the series opens to Darius playing a VR game that grants the winner a free trip to Jurassic World. I thought this was a very cool concept. Actually, a lot of the early stuff we saw was actually from this kind of VR game. I thought that was a cool concept. It allows them to kind of kick off the series with, kind of be a little misleading on where it's actually going. You think they're survivors on an island at first, and then it turns into a VR game. So I thought that was pretty cool. So eventually, after many failed attempts of beating the VR game, being told that, just straight up great gamers can't beat this game, so there's no way he's going to beat the game because he's not, the best gamer that there is. So there's no way he's going to win. But using his love of dinosaurs, he's able to actually beat the game by using the resonator chamber that we first see in Jurassic Park 3. So I thought that was a pretty cool nod to the third film in the franchise. Throughout this kind of prologue, we also learned that his father has passed. So that's a lot of the reason why he, has a lot of, encouragement to continue on and try to beat this game, is because it's him and his father have always wanted to go to Jurassic World, and now that his father is passed, I think that's kind of how he ties, his memories to his father, still trying to achieve that goal of getting to Jurassic World. So moving on, once we actually get to the island, we meet the rest of the kids that'll take place in the series. Everybody's pretty stereotypical, or they follow pretty, rough stereotypes. We have, of course, Darius, who is the Dino Nerd. We have Brooklyn, who is a famous vlogger, and she's at the camp due to her following on social media. So we have kind of the stereotypical social media influencer. She's also the only one allowed to keep her phone, which is also going to be a point to remember later in the series if you haven't watched the full series yet. Sammy, she's here. She's kind of the stereotypical Southern kid. Her family's here because they own a ranch that supplies most of the beef to the park. We have Yasmina, who is kind of the stereotypical athlete. She's a track star who Jurassic World sponsors, so that's kind of the reason why she's here. We have Ben, who is the stereotypical nerdy kid. His mom works for the park, so that's kind of his reason for being here. But he follows that stereotypical, super nerdy kid, kind of quiet, shy. Hates germs, which we'll see later. And then we have Kenji. He's the stereotypical rich bro. When he goes to college, he's definitely going to be a frat guy type deal. Very stereotypical. We do get some character development throughout the series. And going back to our timeline, 3 days before the events of Jurassic World, I think it's a great idea that they actually took a couple steps back and then have this start more on day one of the events of Jurassic World to give the characters a little bit of time to have some character development before all the craziness started happening. So I think that was a pretty good call. But at least right off the bat, they follow some, very rough stereotypes right off the bat. All right, so next up, we kind of have our first successful moment outside of the VR opening. We see something dart across the road, and then you hear some rustling in the bushes. The two counselors grab shock probes and then tell the kids to stay put. From the previews that we see, we really are thinking that there are some raptors out on the loose, but it turns out to just be a compy that ends up jumping from the bushes onto Darius's stomach, and you really see the dinosaur up close. The animation and the model for the dinosaur is amazing. It really kind of a little bit clashes with the people. It is a little bit on the cartoony side. as far as like the coloration or the textures go, but not in the same way that the human characters are. But it looks very good. I think they did a very good job there. They probably have the models from ILM, I'm guessing, but once again, I'm just guessing there. So next up, we see the camp. It looks pretty darn sweet, especially the huge tree houses. So just a cool camp in general. It keeps like the Jurassic Park style and coloring while carrying the Jurassic World brand. So very cool mix between the ultra modern blue and silver and white of Jurassic World with the more colorful Jurassic Park theme. I think it's a good blend between the two. We also learned that camp is designed to host 500 kids. So pretty big camp in general. Moving on, we have the dino herd. I think this is just a cool scene in general. You get to see a lot of dinosaurs on screen at once. You get to see a lot of models, a lot of different types of dinosaurs. So you get to see a lot of dinosaurs really quickly inside of the season. I thought that was just cool. And it also gives us cool insight into how the park actually works. In Jurassic Park and even Jurassic World, from our point of view, it always just seemed to be more of like a big safari park where the dinosaurs just stayed in big, expansive enclosures, and you kind of just went on a tour through those enclosures. And this gives us some insight that at least Jurassic World, maybe not Jurassic Park, but at least Jurassic World operates more like a traditional zoo where the dinosaurs have, enclosures they can go out to, but they are moved to smaller pens at night to better contain them and take care of them. Alright, so to conclude the first episode, we have the raptor encounter. This begins with Darius seeing some lights off into the distance and assumes these must be the Compy enclosure, because earlier when the driver came to pick up the captured Compy, he drove off in that general direction. So you can kind of see where he came to that conclusion, but in the process of sneaking out, he is captured by Kenji, who begins kind of interrogating him in the stereotypical rich bro way. And they're both kind of captured by Brooklyn. Brooklyn, however, sees that this midnight escapade could actually be quite good for her social media following, so they decide that it's a good idea for all three of them to sneak out. When they get to the quote-unquote Compy enclosure, they end up, Kenji ends up trying to steal the phone from Brooklyn and ends up, of course, dropping the phone into the Compy enclosure. Crawling down to retrieve it, he ends up inside of kind of like, he's not in the main perimeter of the fence. He's kind of in a secondary fence where he retrieves the phone. But this is when we actually find out that it's not a Compy enclosure. It's actually the raptor enclosure. Now, as a viewers, we probably have already made that conclusion ourselves because we've seen Jurassic World and we kind of know what the raptor enclosure looks like. But all together with the show, we're all finding out that it is the raptor enclosure, and the kids are in much more trouble than they originally thought. So the episode ends with Kenji and Darius looking like a midnight snack for Blue and company. And that's pretty much the end of episode 1. One kind of sticking point here is I understand not having 24/7 staff kind of at the raptor enclosure. It is in the restricted area on the north side of the park, but you would think they would have some basic security. Maybe on the outside perimeter of this area have a fence that requires a security code or a key card or something to open, so some random tourist can't get in here and possibly let the raptors loose. But anyways, we end this episode there. Kenji and Darius definitely look like they're going to be a midnight snack, but we'll have to wait to see how that is resolved in a recap of episode 2. So thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And until next time, Zach out.